Good evening. So we talked, there's so many ways I can go with this week. I could go with the fact that we had a mascot get knocked out by Conor McGregor. I can go in just many different ways, but I'm just going to say this. Jay Kaplan gets crazy every single time we have what's the word? We have all these moving parts around. So congratulations, South Florida. I love craziness, and you made Jay Kaplan crazy for a week, knowing when we were actually going to do this show. You failed us, South Florida, in actually giving us good series in the finals, but I couldn't love you anymore. Keep making people happy and keep making people insane. Anyway, I'm Steven Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and yes, I am very happy that both series ended before we got on the air, so we knew exactly what we were doing, though. You know, I will say this, I'm sure my best friend is not happy that both her basketball and hockey teams went down in the finals.
I'm Anthony Strait, and I was going to use our last segment to declare my love for the one and only Aubrey Plaza, but my co-host basically talked me out of it. So
no, I didn't talk you out of it. I denied it altogether.
Anyway, instead you get some regular boring sports. I mean, oh well.
My name is Steven Rabinowitz again. Welcome to On the Sports Lines. We'll get to the West clubs who only seem mildly bored before winning a professional title club in the moment with the Las Vegas Knights and the Denver Nuggets. And don't worry, Jokic, you don't have to watch this segment. You can get back to your horses tomorrow. Don't worry, it's not part of your media requirements. But first, off-season coaching news. Welcome to Summer, boys. All right, let's start local with hockey and the New York Rangers, who have announced that the 8th winningest coach of all time and the winningest coach ever to be born in the United States of America by the name of Peter Laviolette is going to be the 37th coach of the Blue Shirts. Peter boasts a Stanley Cup and 2 other finals appearances to his name, along with his 752 wins. This is Peter's 6th team, and he's only 3 teams away from getting the buy one, get one free at the Metropolitan Hockey Club Division punch card, because he has 3 teams left to complete the package. This is team number 5 for him in the Metropolitan Division. He started his career right here with the New York Islanders and was most recently the head coach of the Washington Capitals this season. Laviolette is a hockey lifer, so this seems to be a pretty good move. But Anthony, right move or wrong move?
I would say it's the obvious move, considering who was the coaches available. But I will admit this. I was kind of surprised that the Rangers did make the coaching change, considering under Gallant, the Rangers did have the most successful back-to-back seasons they had in quite a while. But you saw how the Rangers lost that playoff series to the Devils, and I think that Game 7 pretty much kind of sealed his fate. I mean, the Rangers looked old, they looked lifeless, it looked like they never were able to adjust to the Devils as far as the speed and being able to draw up any kind of attack when it came to 5-on-5. So that pretty much became a bit of his undoing. There were murmurs that maybe Gallant lost the locker room a bit. Not sure how true that is or not. But he has the reputation of being a player's coach, and maybe that might have been the sticking point as far as whether he would get a 3rd season. I thought he would have. If you had asked me if there was a coach at Madison Square that was going to be fired, I would have immediately said Tom Thibodeau. But really, I was wrong in that regard. But Laviolette comes in with a lot of experience. Obviously, you mentioned that he's pretty much been at home in the Metropolitan Division with the Owls, the Flyers. He coached the Hurricanes as well, and obviously his latest stint with the Capitals. He has a proven track record, over 20 years of coaching experience. The Stanley Cup in 2006 as well. Holds the record for the most wins by American-born head coach with 752. But also he has a reputation of being a fiery, passionate coach, and maybe that is something that was missing from a Ranger team that showed anything but fiery and passion after winning the first 2 games against New Jersey and only winning 1 more game at a 7-game loss. But also, I do wonder how much of the Rangers' disappointing end to the season falls on Chris Drury, because he made a lot of these moves, particularly the one for Patrick Kane, and Kane never quite looked like he fit in. regardless of the lineup change and the shuffling, he had a great game too against the Jersey. But other than that, just it didn't look like the greatest fit for a team last year that was known for its speed and its youth, relied a little too much on championship experience. They got a little longer in the tooth at the wrong time and got the wrong opponent because the doubles were almost identical to what they were just a season ago. But with Laviolette, he does have this desire to win. Obviously, he wanted to get back into coaching right away. How things ended in Washington, missing the playoffs for only the second time in the last decade. So I think it was pretty much an obvious hire. You do wonder if he's not available, the Rangers to make the coaching change. However, oh wow, I'm sorry, I just looked up and the Mets basically ran themselves out of an inning.
Yeah.
Just sorry, but we're just messing a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that the Rangers. I think this is the captain obvious choice. It's a safe move, nonetheless. But Laviolette got his hand. He got his work cut out because this is the Rangers team that has struggled the last 2 seasons on 5-on-5. Even strength. They have a world-class goalie, and Shesterkin. Now it's just a matter of is the coach the final piece to a puzzle that the Rangers thought will result in the Stanley Cup this season. And obviously, with 24 hours removed from a first-year head coach winning a cup, so the Rangers are hoping that history can repeat itself next season.
I do think, though, that this is more a case of fire first and ask questions later. I don't think they're hiring for Laviolette. It's an interesting case, and I do think there were also a lot of issues between Drury and Gallant, which led to this. Jay, I mean, the Stanley Cup champions ended up going with the first-year head coach this season. So, can the Rangers have the same success?
I don't know. So when this news broke, one of the first things I did is I reached out to my hockey guy. Yes, I have a hockey guy.
You have every guy. I have the same guys too. You just reach out to them more.
I do. And this is his take. This is what he said to me. He goes, quote, "I think the choice is the safe one. I would have liked the Rangers to have thought a little more outside of the box. He is 100% more demanding than Gallant. Laviolette is a better in-game tactician when adjustments are needed. Gallant was more greasy goal type, chipping pucks in deep, getting the puck back. Laviolette's last stint with the Caps was probably the worst of his career. Also, he was available day one. What the F were the Rangers brass doing for a month? Laviolette's coaching style leans more on the traditional side. He's a stern coach with a win-at-all-cost mindset, kind of like Babcock, meaning Mike Babcock, who there's no way the Rangers were bringing here. He adjusts more to what the game dictates, but he's more analytics focused and more carrying the puck in via dump and chase. Conservative on defense. Guys don't pinch in as much. Now, my guy is right about Laviolette being available from day one of the search. He was the first candidate GM Chris Drury interviewed, and it seemed to be the clearest choice from the moment Gerard Gallant was let go on May 6th. And he's not the only one who looks at Laviolette as the safe choice. Here's the Athletics Rangers beat writer Arthur Staple, quote, "Laviolette is essentially the safest choice for Drury, the easiest to sell to ownership." Remember, we're dealing with James Dolan here. Thanks to Laviolette's track record of taking over teams and leading them deep into the postseason, which he did in Carolina, Philly, and Nashville. Only on Long Island, which is in his first NHL coaching stop, in Washington, his most recent stop, did he fail to get his team past the first round. He does have the championship resume that the Rangers prefer. You guys talked about the 752 wins during his 21-year head coaching career, 8th most all time. Led Carolina to that Stanley Cup in 2006, one of 4 coaches, Scotty Bowman, Dick Irvin, and Mike Keenan, and the others, to reach the Cup final with 3 teams. He did it with Philly in 2010 and Nashville in 2017, along with Carolina. And he knows the landscape the Rangers occupy very well. As Rabbi, as you mentioned it, this is his 5th coaching job in the Metropolitan Division. The thing that I'm going to be looking at is what he's going to be tasked with and what he'll have to adjust to. And that he's got a team here that's unlike any of the ones he's previously had. And he's got to get them to the point where they can legitimately contend for Lord Stanley's chalice. This is a team that's top heavy with high-end, highly paid veterans, several younger players who get limited opportunities, and a tier 1 goalie, one that while highly skilled, this team is, while highly skilled, they tend to play as if Igor Shesterkin can fix all of their defensive issues by himself. Laviolette's got a system that attacks when it's close and locks it down when his team has a lead. He knows defense and forechecking. His teams have traditionally played with some structure and some tempo, though he hasn't always embraced younger players like the trio who make up the kid line. It doesn't necessarily been big on giving them chances. That'll likely have to change considering the lack of cap space the Rangers have to fill some holes, especially at the forward position. Laviolette is also going to need to figure out how to get the most out of Alexis Lafreniere, key player on said kid line, and how to get Artemi Panarin to a new level in playoff production. But it's all going to start with getting this team to play tougher and more consistently at even strength. Blue Shirts were 10th in the regular season with 182 goals scored at 5-on-5 and 9th in goals allowed at 5-on-5 with 153. No easy tasks here, any of them. Bottom line, I agree with you guys. I agree with my guy. Drury went with the obvious, hire, the safe hire. Laviolette's been a winner pretty much everywhere he's coached, so he may not be the most exciting hire, but he knows what's required to have success in the NHL, and that's not a bad place for a new head coach in New York to start.
Yeah, but the problem is with the whole move, and again, this is exactly the word I said. It's safe. However, it's weird to make a safe choice a month and a half after the coaching process started, which is what makes me feel like we were probably going after names. Mike Sullivan's name in Pittsburgh, even though still very much under contract, was definitely brought in names, but Pittsburgh was not willing to let it go. No. But it wasn't an obvious, which is why it took so long.
Sullivan has been.
Sullivan is a lot.
He's wanted Sullivan in both times he's had to make a coaching hire. Pittsburgh, and rightfully so, just won't let him go.
No, and nor should they. And it's actually a good move because a lot of times when you see teams getting ready to go to a rebuilding project, that's where they go. And obviously, I think Bruce Boudreau would have been an interesting choice, but I don't know if he would have been able to handle the media of New York. And I think there was John Hines is also another name that a lot of people thought he
was a very interesting name.
Younger guy. He's a guy who's who's with Nashville, who's been with Jersey. That could have been an interesting name. And then, of course, I don't think Joel Quenneville was coming anywhere near this area. And I think the baggage that he had was way too much to be in New York. You want the Rangers to be making headlines, and you want the Rangers to be doing two things. Number one, developing the young players like Chytil, like Kakko, like Lafreniere, which is something Gerard Gallant was not really willing to do, which is possibly why they went into more of a win now, get older type mode this year, which didn't really work. And the other thing is to wake up the stars, specifically Artemi Panarin, and getting a more disciplined guy to get him ready to go for a good postseason run. Yeah, I think Laviolette is a tremendously safe choice. But you know what? When John Tortorella got fired in 2013, Alain Vigneault very much seen as the safe choice, and the team had much more success with Alain than they did with Torts. And that's going to be something that I'm going to be very interested in. You don't necessarily need to hire the sexy name. You just need to hire a name that you can work with. If you don't want to go outside of the box, you have to hire a name you can work with. And that's what Chris Drury is putting his name on. Safe is not bad, though. Safe is pretty good. And I think, again, Laviolette has a lot of experience in this type of market. And I think that's going to be a big help for the future. Will it work? I don't know. It really depends on everybody else around them, because I feel like there's still going to be a lot of upheaval in the East next season. And I think free agency is going to be a big part of what the pecking order is going to be to start 2023.
I will say, I will say this, Hines was an interesting choice, and a lot of people, were kind of very high on him and what he could potentially bring. I just wonder, since Chris Drury, he kind of has to get this right, because he's not going to get another opportunity to make a third coaching hire. And I think after what happened with Dan Quinn, I don't think he was ever going to go with, the young assistant or the guy who had not or did not previously have a resume.
Well, That's a little different from Quinn because Quinn had no resume. Hines was a head coach with the Predators before getting fired this year. Just remember that.
Yeah, but I think he was looking to get somebody who had more of a resume, and I think that
again, that's good, all and good. But if you were going to do that, you hire them before the Stanley Cup Finals end. That's all I'm saying, and that's why it's weird. Go ahead, Anthony.
And by the way, it's not like the Rangers haven't had experience paid over a first-year head coach. Ali Vion did get the Rangers to the Stanley Cup Final his first year, and then the conference finals the following year. So they have some immediate experience to draw on as far as Laviette coming in. But yeah, it's going to be it's going to be really an interesting offseason to see what the rest of the bench is going to look like as far as what the Rangers is going to be dealing with next season.
And you're looking for the same kind of pattern. 2012, Tortorella gets that team to the Eastern Conference Finals, takes a step back, gets swept to the conference semifinals in 2013, and now 2014. Then they had that big run. So let's see what happens. All right, let's go with something that we have no idea how it's going to end, with something that we have a very good idea on how it ended. That would be the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll go from NHL to NHL. Anyway, the Florida Panthers proved that the only parade taking place in South Florida this week is one thrown by Trump supporters. The Vegas Golden Knights have poured Stanley's chalice onto Fremont Street, a 4-1 series victory, and a triple up, rarity in hockey, a 9-3 Game 5 emphatic stamp last night gave the inaugural team of Vegas sports their first Stanley Cup in season number 6 of its existence. Something that the Rotor guaranteed, by the way, on day one. At least he didn't say 7 like it was originally asked of him. He dropped it to 6. Good move. All right, so not much of a series, at least in some points. It looked like it was starting out good. It was one of the best odds series odds-wise that we ever had in terms of betting. Unfortunately, it's turned out into kind of a dud. Anthony, what's your takeaway from this series?
My takeaway is going to be goaltending. Aiden Hill. I don't know how much more you can say about his story. I mean, he was a guy that the Golden Knights picked up last August. He was one of 5 goalies who started for the team this season. Comes in the middle of the conference semifinals. Laurent Brossoit goes down with the injury. He's done for the playoffs, and all he does is come in and goes 11-4 the rest of the way in the postseason, giving up just a little over 2 goals a game, a 93% save percentage. Just an unbelievable. And we've seen this in the past where a goalie just gets hot at the right time, and hell, having to step in and take over in the middle of a playoff game. But basically, he ends up stopping 24 shots and a 5-1 win. So he right away he got out to a great start. But I was reading an article on NHL.com, and his teammates kind of raved about his calmness under the circumstances. I mean, you think about this. He played 27 games in the regular season. It gave up 2.5 goals a game. It was 16-7-1. So clearly he has some experience under his belt at being a starting goalie. And with the Golden Knights, they did have a bend but don't break defense in front of him. That was pretty evident. The first 2 rounds were definitely stepping up. Came to Western Conference Finals and then Stanley Cup Final. We saw the chaotic ending of Game 4, where he pretty much made a toe save that kept that game. That kept the Golden Knights lead and winning that Game 4. That just like every day but the kitchen sink happened, and that final 10 seconds, and then the brawl after the fact. But when you think about this, he could have easily been the Conn Smythe winner. Just considering how he stepped in and almost gave just a phenomenal performance to this team. And it's always a personification of the Golden Knights when you look at their team. I mean, they still have several key players from the original team that went to the Stanley Cup Final in 2018 and came up short to the Washington Capitals. So I mean, just looking at this and they got the Golden Knights, and I'm being a little partial because I do have a bit of a soft spot for the city of Vegas.
You were there.
The Golden Knights. I was at the very first home game against the Buffalo Sabres, October 2017. It was a couple of weeks after the mass shootings, and to see how that community embraced hockey at a time where people were questioning if the NHL having a hockey team in Vegas was the right move, and now we see
any sports team in
later.
Vegas, by the way.
Yeah.
That's always been a stigma for a long time. And any sports team in Vegas, we didn't know what it was going to be like. And
yeah, but now you look at it this. Yeah, but you look at this in the last several months. You have the aces of the WNBA who was off to a torrid start this season. And now the Golden Knights. I mean, the stigma of Vegas being being a dangerous sports town, and now they're almost the city of champions because they're going to have the second championship parade, in the last year. But the Golden Knights, you know what? They just a phenomenal season, a great postseason run. Hill stepping in and pretty much putting on a phenomenal, memorable postseason performance going. He reminded me of John Sebastian Jagier, and this is a guy that Rabbi brought up a few weeks ago. And that 2003 run with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks and getting to the Stanley Cup final, where he just went from a goalie that was good to virtually a wall, getting to and that run. And in Hill's case, like I said, it was just the Golden Knights. They didn't have a superstar per se, but everybody stepped in. Even the main star, Jack Eichel, a guy I talked about last week, needing to step up. He was effective in other ways, being a playmaker and setting his other guys off. Marchand was the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, which is phenomenal in this series. You just go down the list, and you see why they were able to lift Ross Stanley's challenge after probably the most dominant performance I've ever seen in a Stanley Cup clincher. As long as I've been watching hockey.
Once Tkachuk was out for that game, I think they'd already won half of the battle, and it seemed like it was pretty much a party all night. And by the way, 32 saves last night for Aiden Hill. He gave up a couple of garbage goals, but the game was pretty much determined at that point. By the way, this man thought Marchand would be the best player on the ice at the Stanley Cup Finals, and I was 100% correct. The dominant force, much better than the guy who was out there 5 years ago in the Cup Finals in 2018 for the Golden Knights. Jay, the Florida Panthers just ran out of time and ran out of people to be on the ice. They were more or less in the penalty box a lot more than they were actually scoring goals this series.
Penalty box and trainer's room, if you think about it.
That's true.
As much as I will remember good Bob and bad Bob, and what Keith Tkachuk's boy Matthew did in the Panthers' Cinderella run to the Stanley Cup Finals, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What will stick with me is the latest example of how important special teams can be as a reason that a team wins or loses a Stanley Cup playoff series. You guys know how often in the past my stat watch focus with the Rangers during their hunts for Lord Stanley's Chalice has been on their production or lack thereof on the power play. Well, the Florida Panthers joined some bad company with the complete and utter lack of power they showed with the man advantage against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Check this out. In the regular season, the Panthers had a 22.8% conversion rate on the power play. Good for 10th in the NHL. Their 276 power play opportunities, an average of 3.37 power play opportunities per game. Both are fifth best. There are 5 minutes and 43 seconds of power play time on ice per game, second most in the NHL. 63 power play goals and 0.77 power play goals per game, both tied for eighth best. Sam Reinhart's 16 power play goals was 11th. Tkachuk's 14 were 16th. Tkachuk's 36 total points on the power play, good for 10th best. Brandon Montour's 33, good for 19th. Solid numbers coming into the playoffs, and through the first 3 rounds, they pretty much produced as expected. Round 1 against Boston, they went 5 for 20. That's 25% conversion rate. Little under 5 minutes of power play ice time per game, 2.86 power play chances per game, 0.71 power play goals per game. Round 2 against Toronto, they went 3 for 9, 33% conversion rate. Granted, small sample size. Hence they only averaged 3 minutes and 23 seconds of power play ice time per game, and they only had 1.8 power play opportunities per game, which is 0.6 power play goals on average per game. A little more in the conference finals against Carolina, 4 for 14. That's a 28.6 conversion rate. Back up to almost a little over 5 minutes and 41 seconds of power play time on ice per game, 3.5 power play opportunities per game. They averaged 1 power play goal per game in that series. Here's their overall power play production before in the playoffs, before the Stanley Cup Finals. Overall, they were 12 for 43 through the first 3 rounds. It's 27.9 conversion, 6th overall, number 3 among teams that played at least 10 games. 12 power play goals, 3rd best. 0.75 power play goals per game, 7th best, but 3rd among teams with at least 10 games played. 4 minutes, 38 seconds of average of power play ice time per game. That's 10th, 4th among teams that played at least 10 games. 2.69 power play opportunities per game was 13th, but 7th among 10 teams with at least 10 games played. However, in the Stanley Cup Finals, the Panthers' power play went 0 for 14, despite averaging 2.8 power play opportunities per game and 4 minutes and 50 seconds worth of an average of power play ice time per game. After going the entire series without a power play goal, they're now the first team since the 1948 Red Wings to get completely shut out with the man advantage in the Stanley Cup Finals. Not the type of company you want to keep and not how you want to be remembered, but that is the club they're now part of and is one of the things that'll stick in both my memory and that of Panther Nation.
You know, one thing that sticks in my memory, too, is you realize that the Florida Panthers won a majority of their games this postseason in overtime.
Yep.
7 out of their 13 games. Not a way to get yourself into a Stanley Cup final and not a way to get yourself a Stanley Cup run. And unfortunately, it petered out. So, guys, we were talking about teams that drag their feet before making a coaching hire. There was a team that waited 2 months after that waited a little over a month and a half after they got eliminated from the playoffs last year to make a coaching hire. In fact, they made that coaching hire a year ago today. That team was the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and that coach was Bruce Cassidy. You have to remember you have to realize how Bruce Cassidy is just an NHL lifer. Did you know that even though he looks like he's 45, Bruce Cassidy is 58 years old, and he has been coaching in the league since 2002. He was to the Washington Capitals and did pretty well in his first season. And then went 8-16-1 and then got fired 25 games into the season. Guess who the Capitals won the draft lottery that year? And guess who they chose with the first overall pick in that draft? Yeah, they chose Alexander Ovechkin, possibly the greatest hockey player in the modern era outside of Sidney Crosby. He didn't get a chance to coach again until he became another interim head coach after Claude Julien was fired with the Boston Bruins in 2016. All Cassidy did was 6 straight playoff appearances, a President's Trophy, a Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 2019 where they lost a tough Game 7. And then last year, with a younger team and a team that underperformed, and they got to Game 7 against the Carolina Hurricanes, he got canned. And the Vegas Golden Knights really took care of their underachieving head coach, Peter DeBoer, who, by the way, went to Dallas, who Vegas beat in the cup, in the conference final to get here. And, Bruce Cassidy now has a Stanley Cup trophy. And yes, he was also the Jack Adams Award winner 2 years ago. So it's nice to see Bruce Cassidy after a career that spans from 1981 playing wise to now getting to hoist Lord Stanley's chalice. And oh yeah, he's a Cape Cod native, and he's already said he's taking his trophy back to Boston game with the trophy later this year. Also, fun fact, Jack Eichel is also a Boston-ish native and is also taking his trophy back to Massachusetts this year.
Yep.
all of a sudden, Anthony, maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning aren't the most embarrassing President's Trophy winner to lose in the first round anymore because
Oh no, it's the Boston
is
Bruins
not-
this year. Come on now.
Boston, yes. I mean, they got swept, but the Boston Bruins are getting the biggest fuck you thanks to Bruce Cassidy wins the trophy this
Hey,
year.
look, I need to look up who's hosting the NHL awards this year because it's Kenan Thompson again. Good Lord. Look, I was at the NHL awards when he got kind of ragged on the Lightning after they were eliminated in round one. And if there was if Liz could kill, Kenan Thompson would be dead right now because the Lightning was sitting front row, literally 5 feet away from him when he made those jokes, and the dagger staring at him. I'm just looking at Kenan Thompson like, okay, the exit for the Madeline Bay Hotel is to your right. You might want to make a exit stage left immediately. But yeah, when you look at look, one of the things I do like in the NHL all season is watching the players and the staff with their day with the Stanley Cup because you see a variety of crazy things that tend to go on. And hey, look on the bright side. The Golden Knights didn't drop the Stanley Cup and did it like we saw last year with the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
I'm just like I said, I just want to see the stories that come out of this year's Stanley Cup World Tour because we've seen
they're always
taken
fun
to a
and
horse
interesting.
racing. We've seen a baby baptized in it, a baby urinating in one. We've seen a cup get beat up.
And I've known a bunch of people to drink a lot of adult beverages out of that Stanley Cup.
We've seen Canada's favorite food, poutine, eaten out of the Stanley Cup. We have seen a lot of crazy things with the day at the Stanley Cup. I am looking forward to seeing the Golden Knights in Vegas, and considering that city with the Stanley Cup, it's going to be a really fun summer.
I don't know if it's going to.
It's not going to rival Alonso Ovechkin's summer of love, but it'll be close.
I don't know if. By the way, Dirk Bentley is hosting the NHL Awards, and it's next Monday. That's the power of the computer, knowing that I can research anything up in a minute. All right.
By the way, good job.
Speaking of researching something, Rabbi, it's been a pretty good calendar year and a half of the Kroenke family, hasn't it?
That's
the
right.
Rams,
18 years, 18
they won
months.
their lacrosse team won
four professional trophies at the Avalanche last year. So that's 8. That is 4 professional team trophies in 18 months.
Yep.
Putting cap to a bigger ass.
Yeah.
Moving on. Moving on.
Sports.
Gotta move on.
Thank you, Anthony, for ruining my couldn't happen to a better asshole. All right. The NBA Finals, by the way, luckily you can't fuck with the Larry O'Brien trophy because it's really just beautiful one time and then you don't want to ever see it again. The NBA Finals is a wrap, done, finito, finished. And on Monday night, the Denver Nuggets provided the knockout blow in a Serbian-sized gladiator who apparently hates his job by the name of Nikola Jokic. Finals MVP, winning against the Miami Heat 4-1. This is the Nuggets' first championship since their inception from the ABA, and I believe the longest wait between NBA inception to NBA title. That, by the way, 47 years. So let's wrap up what I hate to say, but it seemed like to be more of a foregone conclusion series again than anything else. Jay, your takeaway from the Nuggets, literally and figuratively, climbing the NBA mountain.
For me, it's kind of, the brilliance of Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. I mean, the thing that will stay with me from this Nuggets title run is just the flat out brilliance of these two guys. We covered the association, so we all know just how good the Joker is. But this title run finally showed the rest of the world just how good the 41st pick in the 2014 NBA draft really is. And also when you couple that with the redemption story that it was for his co-star Jamal Murray, who was almost as dominant a force in these playoffs as his running mate. Jokic was the unanimous choice of all 11 voters in the arena for Finals MVP. Had a Finals for the ages in his first appearance on the championship stage. 30.2 points per game, 14 boards, 7.2 assists on a 58.3, 42.1, 83.8 shooting slash line. He is the lowest drafted player to win Finals MVP. First drafted outside of the top 15 to win both regular season and finals MVP. He's the first player in NBA history with 250 boards and 150 dimes in a single postseason. He's also the first and only player to lead all players in a single postseason in points, 600, rebounds, 269, and assists, 190. First player with 10 triple doubles in a single postseason. He punctuated his finals MVP performance with a 28.16 rebound, 4 assists gem, shot 12 of 16 en route to that. Think about the last two primary defenders he's pounded into submission, guys. Anthony Davis, 4-time All-NBA defense, 3 first teams, 1 second, and Bam Adebayo, 4 times All-NBA second team defense. And you can see just how unstoppable Jokic is. Want to go next, Jen? Okay. Jokic was the leading.
I didn't ask, by the way.
Doesn't matter.
That was a rhetorical question.
Exactly. Hence, I didn't wait for either one of you to answer. Jokic was the leading paint scorer in the finals, 17.2 points per game in the painted area, capping it with an 11 for 13 shooting night in the paint in Game 5. As for Murray, well, all he did was put up a 21.4 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, and 10 flat assist series. His shooting slash line, 45.1, 38.7, 92.9. I talked about his recovery from the ACL injury that cost him the 2 previous postseasons. It was a long road back, but he made it, and it was a legit second star for the Nuggets in this series and throughout the postseason run to the title. Murray also joined some elite company in his first trip to the finals, becoming only the 4th player ever to average at least 20 points and 10 assists in the NBA Finals. Magic Johnson in 87 and 88, Michael Jordan in 91, and LeBron in 2017 and 18 are the other 3. That's some pretty rarefied air. He was also the first player in NBA history to drop at least 10 dimes in each of his first 4 games in a finals series. Talked about the non-Jokic minutes on our last show. Here's some of that, more of that for you. In the regular season, the Nuggets were a ridiculous 22.9 points per 100 possessions better with Jokic on the floor, plus 12.5, than they were with him off the floor, minus 10.4. That was the biggest on-off differential among the 252 players who racked up at least 1,000 minutes this season, and the 3rd biggest differential in the last 15 years. But in the playoffs, as I noted, the Nuggets managed not to get crushed when their alpha was off the floor. They struggled a bit when Jokic picked up 2 early fouls in Game 5, but overall in the finals, they actually outscored the Heat by 2 points in Jokic's 35 total minutes on the bench. Oh, and get this, the Nuggets scored a remarkable 71 points in the 61 possessions. That works out to 129.5 points per 100 in the 34 minutes where Murray was on the floor without Jokic. Having the Nuggets coverage for the show over both the Western Conference Finals as well as the NBA Finals, I got to see this team led by these two do their thing at a ridiculously efficient level. Denver's offensive rating for the entire postseason was 118.2, tops among all playoff teams. And while Miami gave them their toughest test yet, they show that they can defend at a championship level when they struggle to score, and that they can win a rock fight, which they had to do to close out this series, just as well as they can win a shootout. Jokic and Murray have been fun to watch, and what they've built in Denver, along with head coach Michael Malone and GM Calvin Booth, will hopefully have us enjoying more deep postseason runs with them in the near future.
It's kind of funny when you think about it, because the last 2 years when Murray was injured, Jokic played MVP ball, I mean, being named MVP, and got his team to a 2nd round series with basically a cast of nobodies, and got his team to a reasonable series with Golden State with a cast of even worse nobodies. And then the years before that, they got to the 2nd round, Game 7 against Portland, and got to the Western Conference Finals in the Game 6 against the Lakers. So you have to say the injuries didn't really hurt the growing process, and it all ended up becoming, in the end, one of the best duo performances we've ever seen in an NBA Finals. Again, only Shaq and Kobe could even qualify with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Unfortunately for the Miami Heat, Anthony, their luck just ran out in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, the clock finally struck midnight on Cinderella. Just an amazing postseason run when you think about it. This is a team that looked so bad in that first playing tournament game against Atlanta, and needed a comeback against Chicago to just get into the playoffs as the AC, and then we saw just an unbelievable postseason run. Jimmy Butler in that first round, his 54-point performance in that Game 4 against Milwaukee still one of the most remarkable individual performances I've ever seen. They knocked off the one-seeded Bucks. They knocked off the Knicks in 6 games, and for a while in that conference finals, it looked like the Knicks were their toughest opponent. And before they hold on to their life and winning Game 7 after almost 3-0 lead. But Denver, they just ran into a buzzsaw. Denver would have been the best team in the Western Conference all season. Many prognosticators didn't even pick Denver to come out of the Western Conference, which says a lot about the Nuggets being so good at flying under the radar. But you look at that game, the Game 5. Jimmy Butler for 3 quarters was 2 of 10. Before he finally got it going in the 4th quarter and scored 13 points. But the supporting cast of Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, Matt Struz, and Gabe Vincent combined 2 of 17 from 3. And Miami's Achilles heel all season had been outside shooting. They were 25th ranked outside a 3-point shooting team in the league. They were dead last in offensive efficiency throughout the regular season. Their lack of size caught up to them and trying to stop Nikola Jokic. This is a team that was out-rebounded in all 4 of their playoff series. Out-rebounded about 44 to the Denver Nuggets in this series. So there's a lot of things that the Miami Heat going into the offseason has to look at. Maybe bringing in another scorer, maybe a bona fide number 1, because now the question marks of whether Jimmy Butler can be a number 1 on a championship team gets a little louder, even though, I mean, Jimmy Butler, for what it's worth, for three rounds was the best player in the NBA playoffs, not named Nikola Jokic, because Miami just had no answer for him. And when they played the zone, he was the one guy that they couldn't account for, which was not the case against Milwaukee, against the Knicks, and against the Boston Celtics, who did not have a 7-footer who can score on their respective teams. But Jokic, the playmaker, is what hurt the Miami Heat the most in this series. It wasn't just the scoring; it was Jokic fighting KCP and fighting Michael Porter Jr. And how about Bruce Brown, by the way, who was a Brooklyn Net cast-off, who left last. It was so good last season, and he gets his championship. But Eric Spoelstra he continues to show why he's one of the best coaches in the league, one of the most underappreciated head coaches in the game, by a mile. But the Miami Heat, this is a team that they still have a lot of work to do in the offseason. They have to add some size. They have to add some outside shooting. And yeah, there was going to be a question of, can we add another number 1 to maybe help Jimmy Butler as far as scoring? Because you look at Butler, Butler just looked like you did a good job defensively on him.
You got to wonder here just how much not having Tyler Hero for this series, hurt them. The dimension that he brings, and this is no knock on any of the other guys that stepped up to fill that hole. But, Tyler Hero, for, all his faults on the defensive side of the ball, the kid's a legitimate 20-point-a-game scorer. He's legitimate to rain threes from downtown. And we all know how inconsistent Miami was from beyond the arc in this series. So you have to wonder, and this is no disrespect to the Nuggets, because Anthony, they were a buzzsaw, and they may have wound up winning this series anyway, even if Tyler Hero did play. May have gone 7 instead of 5, but you just have to wonder how much, his not being available really wound up hurting them. Did it force Adebayo and Butler to have to play more and exert themselves more, without having any consistent relief in terms of on the offensive end, considering what their defensive responsibilities were for this series?
I do want to say something to actually immediately go into that. I've always been to the feeling that, yes, Tyler Hero would have made a big difference because it's always going to have a third 20-point score. But if Tyler Hero was not ready from this series from day one, the answer would have been no. And I think that was the problem. You needed at least a Tyler Hero that you could assimilate in the starting lineup and really ramp up his minutes. You really had to treat that game 1 and 2 almost like it was preseason for him and get him to like 10 to 15 minutes in either game and then get him ready for the games that really blew this series for them. And that's game 3 and game 4. Because if you didn't have a 60 to 70% Tyler Hero, he was going to be a minus. So I think, yeah, I agree completely with what you're saying, but I think it was pretty honestly stupid for anybody to think that Tyler Hero could immediately take off the shirt, bring out the Superman logo on their chest.
Rabbi, I'm talking about Tyler Hero being
at full strength. Yeah,
Tyler Hero, being at 100% from jump. I'm not talking about they made a mistake by not trying to push him and bring him off the bench.
The only problem is that's a big what if. That's a big what if.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
This time, because a lot of the NBA, especially at this time of year, is what you can do with what you have.
By the way,
go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I want to add this too with the Miami Heat and the zone defense. With Duncan Robinson on the court, because he was such a defensive liability, they had to play zone out of necessity because Duncan Robinson is not a good defensive player.
No, he is not.
And when he was on the court, you saw Miami playing a lot more zone, even when Jokic was on the court, which is something that they needed to avoid to have a chance in series. But once they got to the zone and Jokic was just there to be able to just roam into the middle of the zone and even get a short little floater or find an open teammate, it was just pretty much all she wrote.
Just remember, Mike Malone actually made adjustments to the zone, unlike a certain Joe Mazzulla who did the series before. By the way, fun fact, Miami, for an NBA finalist, you would never think this, 3-7 in their last 10 games, because remember, they had to basically hold off that historic Boston comeback, which was still a lot of Florida themselves. Okay, we talked about everything. By the way, I do want to respond to the Butler comment. Butler is a number 1. I think there might have been some lingering issues with him because if you even get an Adebayo-like performance out of Butler in this series, which you did not get, you probably see this series at least go one more game and possibly go 7. I don't know if this Nuggets team would be able to be beat. The problem with Jimmy Butler was not, can he be a number 1? He could be a number 1. We saw that in this playoffs, that Jimmy Butler's playoff Hemi, I hate that word, is a legitimate thing that needs to be recognized. But Jimmy Butler was tired at the end during this series, pretty much the whole entire way. If you get a standard regular season Jimmy Butler performance, this is a series that we actually are talking about, probably not over at this moment. But I do want to actually say some very quick things about the Nuggets role players. You mentioned Brown. I love the story of Brown. It does show that the Nets gave away so many role players last year. It's ridiculous. He's probably going to be a free agent again because the Nuggets can only offer his minimum, but he is going to be a very worthy addition, and he has championship medal. I want to give some credit to Michael Porter Jr., whose defense pretty much kept him off of the floor in the last minutes of Game 3 and Game 4. And me and Jay talked about it a lot. We all talked about it. Porter's defense in Game number 2 was atrocious. And he really, really redeemed himself in terms of his shooting ability, especially in that Game 5 game. I want to give props to Aaron Gordon, who after a terrible series against the Lakers, Game 1, flexed his muscle right out of the gate and really, really, really showed the tempo of the series. Game 4, he took advantage of those minutes when Jokic had to be out because of the ankle tweak and really kept Nuggets in that game. He always took advantage of every mismatch physicality-wise that he had in this series. For a guy who I've never, ever noted as a big-time performer, because he usually played most of his games with a shitty Magic team for most of his career, he really did a good job. And now I want to end this with some trivia. Christian Braun, what a story. 21st pick of the draft, and now he gets a little bit of history. He had a great Game 3, by the way, and really showed up in this series.
15 points on 7 of 8.
Amazing game. But Christian Braun won the championship last year with Kansas. So he becomes one of only 5 players in NBA history to go NCAA championship and then NBA championship.
Yeah, and
Other four.
and Rabbi, he also won 3 consecutive state championships at the high school level before going to Kansas.
That's right. But here's what I want to mention. There are only 4 other players in NBA history that have done this.
Have done the NCAA and NBA in back-to-back seasons.
The one, I'll just give them to you since we're running short of time. The one obvious one is Billy Thompson. That's the last person to do it. Had it been done, did Louisville and Lakers. That hadn't happened in 36 years. The other 3 names you might know. Henry Bibby, Mike Bibby's father.
UCLA and the Lakers.
Knicks in 73.
Oh, okay, all right.
But then the other 2 names you kind of know. Guy by the name of Magic Johnson, Michigan State and the Lakers. A small guy by the name of Bill Russell, San Francisco in 56, Celtics in 57. So Christian Brown, even though you spell your last name as Braun to make it for everybody, it's Brown though.
That's some elite company.
It's an elite company. So Christian Brown, I salute you, and you're going to be a key part of what is, again, Micah Malone did a very good job. And we talked about it. We didn't talk about it last week enough, but I do have to say, Nuggets stuck with him in a lot of situations. And even Malone said in his interviews, the 3rd year he was there, they basically lost what amounted to a game 82 against the Timberwolves. This was the Thibodeau Timberwolves in that era where they were at 8, where they were basically playing for the 8th seed and basically the right to get destroyed by the Houston Rockets in the first round, but that's not neither here nor there. He lost that game and he thought he was going to get fired at that moment, and he didn't. And look what happened now. They stayed with his highs and lows, and you have an NBA champion.
This is what I was talking about, Rabbi, when we talked about the coaching carousel previously, and I talked about the knee-jerk reactions, the lack of patience, the need for instant success. And this is what, and I hope that this kind of, sounds of, I hope other owners around the NBA actually freaking take a moment and listen and recognize patience eventually pays off.
Unfortunately, though, for some coaches, you can have all the patience you want, but that patience also extends to the players too. Just remember that. But we've talked about that. That's a drum that needs to be buried in the ground. Let's move on. Onward to the sad baseball diamond, although it's not too sad right now this week. Starting with the New York Yankees, heading into their short series with the Mets. They did win last night. They're currently in extra innings now. They were coming off a pretty putrid 2-4 homestand. Coinciding with
that week with hosiery.
Yeah. Yes. Very good line. Coinciding with putting well, everything. Let's just go with that with Aaron Judge. He got put on the dial with the toe injury. There have been points this season where Judge has either looked at like the best player in the world, and there are times when he hasn't played. There really is no in between. Judge has been an MVP candidate when he's been on the field. The only ability that has been a problem, Jay, with Judge is unavailability. So I just ask you to rate simply, in this lineup, who needs to step up?
Well, I'll leave the who needs to step up to you guys. I'm just going to kind of throw some stuff at you so you can.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Yeah, tell me about what they're missing with Judge.
Yeah, what they're missing. I mean, it is kind of a Captain Obvious, thing. The Yankees just don't score enough runs without their captain in the lineup. Overall, this season, coming into the Subway Series with Judge in the lineup, 30-19. 5 runs per game. Without him, 8-10, 3.33 runs per game. We all know what the reigning AL MVP did last season. We talked about it on plenty of shows. But before he got hurt against the Dodgers, Judge was well on his way to replicating it. Check out these numbers over his first 49 games in 2023 compared to 2022 when he hit those 62 home runs. Home runs through the first 49 games in each season, 19 in each. Multi-home run games through the first 49 games in each of the last 2 seasons, 4 in each. Runs scored this year, 42. Last year, 40. RBI through first 49 games, 40 this year, 39 last year. Extra base hits, 29 this year, 28 last year. Plate appearances per home run, 2023, 11.2. Last year, 11.2. Slugging percentage. This year, 674. Last year, 660. OPS this year, 1.078. Last year, 1.0434. Coming into the Subway Series, the Yankees were 3-4 in their last 7 games since Judge got hurt on June 3rd. They scored 21 runs in those 7 games. You guys can do the easy math. That's 3 per game. Compare that to the month of May, where the Yankees went 19-10 and scored 157 runs. That's 5.4 per game. Judge in the month of May, slash line of 342, 474, 882. That's a 1.356 OPS with 12 homers and 25 RBI. Not a coincidence. When Judge went out, he was leading the American League in home runs with 19, which he still does, and he was top 5 in RBI with those 40. Now, the Yankees did manage 7 runs against the Mets in their win in Tuesday night in the first of this 2-game Subway Series at Citi Field, with contributions up and down the lineup. Every member of the starting lineup got a hit. Gleyber Torres was the only one without either a run scored or an RBI. They just need more of that on a more consistent basis while Judge is out, if they're going to, A, offset what has been a very shaking starting rotation outside of Garrett Cole, and 2, stay within shouting distance of the AL East leading Tampa Bay Rays. It's simple math, guys.
Yeah. It's funny, though, because you also realize, as we're going to get to Anthony, who is showing no bias in this segment whatsoever and putting on his jersey.
What took you so long, Ant?
The other segments. Anthony, let me set it up. Anthony, seeing the Yankees, they just do not have the star power without Judge in the lineup, but they still have stars. Who needs to step up? That's the correct way to ask that question.
Yeah, speaking of which, has anyone seen Anthony Rizzo the last couple since the beginning of the month? Wow. Rizzo coming into the Subway Series was 0 for his last 22.
That's a career
And the first game, he was 0 for 24 before he finally got his stopped that streak, got a hit, scored a run, and was hit by a pitch. So if you want to total it up, he's a combined 1 for his last 26 coming into tonight's game. So Rizzo at the beginning of the month, beginning of June, had solid numbers. Slash line was 304, 376, 505, 11 home runs, and 32 RBIs of the season. And since the turn of the calendar month, it's been a different story. He hasn't hit a home run. Last night, he scored a run. He hasn't driven in a run for this month. Aaron Boone actually gave him a day off over the weekend in the loss to the the Saturday win over the Red Sox. But then he started the Sunday night game and immediately went 0 for 3. So
he's 0 for 3 tonight.
Rizzo, when you think about Anthony Rizzo's track record as being a very solid hitter, he's never been a guy who's going to hit 300 consistently, but he's a guy that does give you some pop. You've seen him when his days with the Chicago Cubs, obviously coming over in the train with the Yankees, and you would think a guy like Rizzo being a lefty, taking advantage of that right field porch almost at any point. Even in Citi Field, right field is a very tempting thing to swing at when you're a left-handed hitter in both ballparks. But Rizzo, when you bag cleanup, you gotta be able to produce, and he has been bag cleanup for the Yankees off and on since Judge went down, and he has not been producing. Aaron Boone says a bit of a head scratcher talking about he'll break through. He had a good bat practice. Hey, look, I can look like Hank Aaron in bat practice. Doesn't mean I'm going to go 4 for 4 on a ball game, going after high heat. But Rizzo, look, he's got to step it up. He's got to be. Yeah. I don't think the cleanup spot is good for him. He's better. Has the number 2 guy, maybe number 4, number 3. Maybe dropping him down in the batting order might help him out a little bit. I just don't think the cleanup spot is best for him right now. I know, obviously, Rabbi, you're going to talk about your call Stanton for your talking point, but I just don't think Rizzo should be back cleanup when you're struggling this mightily. I think Aaron Boone just need to help him out and move him out of that spot. Maybe move him up in a lineup where he's been more successful in that number 2 hole.
Well, I mean, Anthony, I think that part of that moving him around, has been somewhat based on matchups. I think he prefers to keep Rizzo firmly embedded in that number 3 hole. He's shifted him down into the cleanup slot based on who else is in the lineup around him.
Yeah.
Stanton has Stanton's the intriguing one, Rabbi. I'll let you do more about that. What's interesting to me is that Stanton has been inserted into Judge's number 2 spot since coming back, which I found interesting. And I guess maybe that's trying to get him shooken up. But you would think that with the shift gone, Rizzo would have been one of the major beneficiaries, of shift related outs being turned into hits. And when the start of the season, he was kind of doing that. But I mean, I have not seen Anthony Rizzo in this bad a slump ever. And like I said, it's the worst. It is hands down the worst slump he has ever been in his entire career.
And it's kind of I don't want to say this as a homer. I kind of feel bad for Aaron Boone sometimes because I feel like he has a puzzle and then always somebody is stealing 3 pieces of that puzzle away, and that puzzle can never be whole, which is the reasons why Rizzo is batting third, because the only possible people to bat cleanup in that lineup is Giancarlo Stanton and Josh Donaldson, and that's really it. You don't put DJ LeMahieu in the 4 spot.
No,
he's a number 5 or 1 guy. For God's sake, Shake Powers, who has actually been someone who's
batting leadoff the last 2 games,
the last 2 days. So, but Giancarlo Stanton is interesting, and unfortunately for Giancarlo Stanton, he deals with having friends in the lineup, so to speak, because he does need people to help him out, and basically his return, as usual in the revolving door, basically meant Judge's exit. He only played 1 game with Judge, and that was his Friday return on June 2nd. And after that, Judge's first game out was June 4th, after the day when he had that catch in the right field stands. Overall, listen, Giancarlo Stanton always struggles post-injury. His batting average has gone down from 273 to a whopping 234 as of today, and he's, I believe, over 4 in this game currently going on right now. He's only had RBIs in that first game and the last game that he played yesterday. And the problem with the thing with Giancarlo Stanton is you're not looking for his hitting power, but you're looking for his oh shit power.
Yeah.
The one person that you can do in this lineup, you can look and say, oh shit, he's up at bat, is Giancarlo Stanton. When he is on a home run tear, the man is on a home run tear. Mm-hmm. And that's what he is good for right now. He's obviously, as mentioned, his average is terrible. His on-base percentage is terrible. It's 289 currently right now. That's a beautiful 809 OPS. Not what you want. But maybe he just needs to play against the Mets more often. Here are some fun stats that I had just found about his. He had a home run last night against Max Scherzer. That is his 4th home run against Max Scherzer his career. Nobody has had more, I believe, in the majors, or at least in those spots. And he also has his numbers against the Mets are outstanding. 38 career home runs against the Mets, most against any opponent and most by any active player. 24 of them in Citi Field, 10 more than any other visitor, and 4 times in his career off of Max Scherzer. The one thing that's going to be interesting for me is Giancarlo Stanton is pretty much right now, I think, until he gets his mojo back, has to be a DH in that lineup. It does also give you a couple of conundrums in the outfield. And it really just boggles the mind that sometimes for everybody who gives Aaron Boone the shit that he does, and he makes stupid decisions sometimes, and he sometimes baffles me with his actions, what else are you going to do with the roster that is never 100% completely healthy? I know I was talking about it earlier. How I don't give NBA teams credit when they have it, but that's in the playoffs. This is in June. Yep. And this is almost like, it's almost shocking to me that this is a team that is 10 games over 500 and now, 9 games over 500 because they just lost second game to the New York Mets. But being in a playoff spot in a league, by the way, where you need to
very tough
because you're probably going to need 91 wins just to be in the playoff conversation this year. It's kind of interesting to see how the Yankees have been able to keep everything with duct tape and barbed wire, as the say.
I add this as well. And I remember the season preview, we talked about Aaron Boone had to figure out the rotation because of all the injuries. And now
we haven't even talked about the rotation here. That's for another time.
Aaron Boone has not, I can't recall the last time Aaron Boone has had a healthy roster to work with. At any point the last couple of years, it's been one guy out, another guy in. They get one guy back, two more guys are out. I mean, boom. For this Craig has been really just making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah, I mean, and you
can.
Yeah, I mean, and you talk about the lemons. Tonight is very much an example of lemons. Stanton, Donaldson, Rizzo, and LeMahieu. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the Yankees lineup. They were a combined 1 for 15, 1 run scored, no RBI.
And that makes them 4 and 5, I believe, or 4 and 5 since Judge came out of the lineup. So they're still going to need to do some things in the near future. All right, Red Sox this weekend too is going to be a very interesting test, especially after the last 3. All right. If the Yankees had a putrid homestand going into the quick series with the Mets now 2-8 stretch in their last 10, or is it 2-9 stretch in their last 11? I think it's 2-9.
2-9 last 11.
Yeah, 2-9 in their last 11. That's rancid. In Game 6 of this train wreck run, Anthony, don't listen to this next 1 minute. And a 13-10 extra inning loss to the Braves, star first baseman and major league home run leader still, Pete Alonso, got hit in the hand and went to the IL after. Heat says, "Throw it at me again." The Braves said, "We'll throw you on the IL again," apparently. Anthony, needless to say, the Mets need people to step up for what you're going to see as you lose a lot with Pete Alonso not in the lineup. And honestly, they need everything they can get right now, because even with Pete in the lineup, they haven't been doing too much.
Well, think like this. At the time Pete Alonso went down with the injury, the Mets home differential for how many they hit compared to the opponent was 91-79. And a lot has been made about the Mets falling behind in the first inning of games this season. I think it's 48-14. They've been outscored offensively in the first inning. But in seven of these games, they've only averaged 2.7 runs a game. Offense, this is with Alonso in the lineup. There were 21st in batting average, 17 in runs scored, 20. This is a team that just cannot score runs, and when they do, as you seen last night, their pitching falls apart completely. I mean, look at the star players, the guys that were supposed to step up. Lindor just barely batting above the Mendoza line. He's batting in the 213 coming into tonight. Jeff McNeil, last year's batting champion, has struggled. Jay Vogelback has been given time off. I mean, just a mental break. He has drawn the ire of frustrated Met fans as the DH for much of the season. But also look at Stolen Marte, and this is the combined slash alliance from last year between Lindor, Marte, and Jeff McNeil. Last season, the slash line was 295, 355, 456 for a 811 OPS. That's last season. This season, 248, 319, 372 for a 691 OPS this season. And we've seen last night in the first game, the Mets had the bases loaded with 1 out. Lindor and Marte back-to-back strikeouts to end the Mets' last gasp at a rally. And we saw tonight, they practically ran themselves out of a big inning with Brandon Nimmo being caught too far to second base. Francisco Alvarez has been only the lone bright spot offensively for the Mets in the lineup. He's provided some pop. He has 11 home runs in the season. But outside of that, it has not been much else. And Alonso, while he still lead the league in home runs, he had 27.8% of the Mets home runs this season. Jorge Soler is the only other guy in Major League Baseball who has a larger percentage of the home runs for his team. That's with the Miami Marlins, respectively. So that is the offensive side. When you lose Alonso defensively, it's been makeshift. Mark Vientos started at first base in tonight's game, and he hasn't really had much at bats, since he's been called up. And last night was Mark Hanna, who really hadn't played much first base since his days to Oakland A's. So it's been a long time. It's been a patchwork. The good news is Alonso was able to take some grounders before yesterday's game, so maybe he may come back sooner for the Mets. But in the meantime, guys gotta step up. I mean, even if they're not getting the home runs, last season the Mets were among the best as far as hitting with runners in scoring position. That is not the case this season. And when you look at your big guys, they've gotta. We talked about with the Yankees and what they missed with Aaron Judge. It is literally identical with the Mets and missing a big bat and Pete Alonso in the lineup, and Buck Showalter having to play patchwork, not just with the lineup, but also in the field too, because Alonso was still everyday first baseman.
Well, Murphy's Law, and I mean regular Murphy's Law, not Daniel.
Not Daniel.
Now that he's out of the Long Island Ducks organization and with the Angels, says that for the Mets, anything that can go wrong this year will go wrong. But maybe this win against the Yankees will help them kind of start to get a little bit of a path.
Well, it's stop the bleeding momentarily.
This was a big one, especially after all of the stuff that happened with the stealing home. All right. Who's going to step up now in the absence of Alonso? It's still going to be a few more games. So, Jay, who do you think needs to do the damage?
I mean, the captain obvious choice is the guy that Anthony mentioned, and that's Francisco Lindor.
You mentioned everybody, so mention at least one of them, okay? Make sure you save some meat on the bones for us, buddy.
Though I disagree with my esteemed Met fan colleague over here that he's been a bright spot. I mean, it's easy to put them at shortstop in the spotlight and under the microscope with Alonso on the injured list. But Lindor needing to step up his production was a thing well before the polar bear was out of the lineup. It's been an odd and below average season at the plate for Lindor, who's averaged a 253, 332, 434 slash line with a 765 OPS and an average of 23 homers, 85 RBI, and 86 runs scored over the last 2 years since setting up shop in Queens. Coming into the Subway Series, Lindor's slash line was 216, 291, 420 with a 711 OPS. He does have 12 homers, and his 43 RBI were tied for 8th in the NL coming into the series. So while overall he hasn't hit well, he has made the most out of the hits he's produced. He's slashing 271, 366, 458 with an 824 OPS, 2 homers and 27 RBI, and his 71 plate appearances with runners in scoring position, and 257, 339, 496 with an 834 OPS, 6 dingers and 37 batted in overall with men on base in 130 plate appearances. But compare that to his 183, 252, 359 slash line. His 611 OPS with 6 homers and 6 RBI, with 155 plate appearances with the bases empty, which means he's really not setting the table for those coming up behind him. In 10 games in June prior to this Subway Series, his slash line was 171, 275, 371. That's a 646 OPS. He had just 2 home runs and just 3 RBI. Tuesday night, in the first of this 2-game Subway Series at Citi Field, Mets managed to put up 6 runs, but Lindor wasn't really involved in any of it. He went 0 for 3. He had 2 walks. He struck out once in 5 plate appearances. So in 3 of his 5 trips to the plate, he didn't even put the ball in play. Most egregiously, he struck out swinging with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 8th, 1 out against Clay Holmes, when the bare minimum he needed to do was get the ball in the air enough to get the runner on third home to tie the game. This is supposed to be your second star, a guy who can carry a team when needed. Nights like Tuesdays, especially while Alonso is on the injured list, is not going to get it done. Granted, he did go 1 for 4 with a run scored tonight in tonight's win, but just like Tuesday, he once again left runners in scoring position, something he cannot keep doing. Mets need a hell of a lot more from Francisco Lindor.
By the way, I would say this: I said Francisco Alvarez was the bright spot.
Alvarez, he definitely did not. Yeah, he said.
Thank you.
For the bright spot, not really. Nobody thinks he's the bright spot right now. Quickly, before I want to get to our last topic here, Starling Marte has been better last few months. He had his average as bad as 216 in early May. He's up to 257 now, but it's been an average season for a guy who kind of needs to be the second or third best hitter in your lineup all of the time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
there's just no real, like, he's also a stolen base guy. He hasn't really had any big time stolen base numbers this year. I believe he's only at I want to say 18 overall, but it's just not great. It's just not great what I've seen with Marte. It's just not great what I've seen with a lot of this team. There's only been the only times he had multi-hit games in the last few. He has had no multi-hit games this month. He's okay. I'm sorry. He's had a bunch of multi-hit games. My apologies. He's actually been a lot better. He's hit in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games, but he doesn't really. He's just not really lighting up a lineup that last year a lot of people said that team was struggling at the end of the year because of Marte's absence. So I really think Starling Marte needs to really get it going. And I can say that these teams are going to get it going, but for God's sakes, the Texas Rangers are in first place. The Baltimore Orioles are now a killing machine. The Marlins had a 400 hitter a week ago and are currently in a wild card spot. The Diamondbacks are leading the Dodgers in the NL West. I don't know what's going on in baseball right now. It's going to be a fun summer, but it's a weird summer. And it's almost like the meek shall inherit the earth in this case, because that's what baseball is currently right now. Going to be very fun to see it down the stretch, but if you were to tell me, how do you think New York?
Have you mentioned how bad the Central divisions are in baseball right now?
And by the way, what team currently has the best winning streak in all of baseball? The Oakland Athletics.
Yep.
The team who basically had a reverse boycott. Of 28,000 people that were chanting "Sell the team." Won the game anyway, and they've won 7 in a row, which, by the way, has put them ahead of the Mets pace from 1962. In the words of what I was about to say, how could you be romantic about baseball when watching this? How could you? So stupid. All right, moving on to our final topic of the night, and it's even stupider. It's golf. Well, I mean, not stupid. I like golf, but still, there's a lot going on. Anyway, the 123rd U.S. Open Championship is in golf's most beautiful state, California, and the beautiful Los Angeles Country Club. Brooks, okay, you wanted just to talk about that golf merger, huh? All right. I'm
sorry, man.
That's all we're doing. All right. Last Tuesday, the shock to the public and apparently all of the entire PGA and LIV Tour who decided to open up their social media, the two sides agreed to not necessarily merge, but work in consortium. Aren't you glad I added that into this week's show? But that's how all lawsuits between the two dropped, and the very likely idea of LIV golfers at playing at tour events are very much likely. It's again a move that's shocking to a lot, considering LIV wasn't really making money at all. They are shown to have not had a profit in 2022, and there seemed to be no signs at all of this happening until the day of deal last Tuesday. Jay, what is the after effects of a surprising merger between the Michael Scott Paper Company and Dunder Mifflin? I'm sorry, LIV.
Don't apologize. That was a fantastic meme making the rounds when this broke.
It made it immediately, and it was so perfect. That's as I said to Anthony when the news came about. That's what the internet is for, to put 2 and 2 together without having to think. You have to take everything else on social media into account, but that's what social media is at its greatest for. All right, your thoughts on this unholy alliance?
It's funny. I mean, Rabbi, when you texted me, like right after the story broke, that this had gone down, and I agreed that, whether it was the opener or it was going to be where it is right now as our closer, we definitely had to talk about it. And then I started to read about it. All the stories The Athletic published on this last week, and as I read each one, the scene from The Godfather kept playing in my head, the one where Marlon Brando utters that famous line, "I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse." Because after all the back and forth and all the vitriol in and out of the courtrooms and across all forms of media, it turns out Jay Monahan did in fact protest too much. And when Yasser Al-Rumayyan and Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, which bankrolled LIV, made him an offer, the PGA boss not only didn't refuse, he smiled, shook hands, and went into business with a guy in a country he previously swore up and down and on the memories of those who lost their lives on 9/11 that he'd never, ever partner with. And here's where my rant begins, guys. And that's my biggest issue with how this played out. Not the money. Don't get me wrong. I do have an issue with the money, but it's somewhat secondary because I have a feeling that the PGA was hemorrhaging more money than they let on, which is likely why they were so unwilling to open their books. A situation likely exacerbated by legal fees due to the LIV lawsuits, not to mention a Department of Justice investigation, on top of desperately needing the infusion of cash to keep the lights, if not simply on, then bright enough to obscure other issues, such as the need to boost tournament purses and bonus money to compete with what the PIF pumped into LIV for its players' guaranteed contracts and to subsidize the PGA's partners at the DP World Tour. So I'm not surprised they took the money. No, my biggest issue was that Monahan took the money after he'd co-opted the suffering of the families of 9/11 victims and used it to hammer Al Rumayyan, the PIF, and Saudi Arabia at every turn, along with the country's awful human rights track record, saying it was why he would never let them use golf as yet another vehicle in their sports washing campaign to rehab their image, as well as railing against the golfers who defected to LIV Golf, saying they had engaged in golf treason. And now, after blindsiding players, including Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods, the PGA's two most vocal defenders in the fight with LIV, and their TV partners alike, seems like all parties found out about this on Twitter, Monahan is talking about golf's bright future with this partnership that has the PGA Tour, DP World Tour, and LIV Golf merging to form one body, with Al Rumayyan serving as chairman and Monahan as CEO, and thus on paper answering to him. The guy he'd been publicly bashing at every opportunity, but behind the scenes, maybe not so much. After it all went down, a story came out detailing a clandestine meeting between Monahan and Al Rumayyan in Venice, where Monahan apparently began trusting Al Rumayyan 10 minutes after sitting down with him. What the actual you-know-what? I'm with the Athletic's Brody Miller, who in his great piece about this whole messy affair wrote this about Monahan. Here's the quote. He seemed to believe it. Deep in Jay Monahan's face that day on CBS a year ago, he spoke with conviction. He used 9/11. He used family friends who lost loved ones. He called those ignoring Saudi Arabia's human rights record, quote, living under a rock, and asked the now infamous question to LIV defectors. Have you ever had to apologize for being a member of the PGA Tour? And then Brody Miller asked this question. Was it all a fake? Or was it evidence that money can dissuade any principle? Look, as a born and raised New Yorker who watched in horror from a few miles away as the Twin Towers fell, who mourned the losses on 9/11 even though none were my own, who eventually went to work at the Freedom Tower and walked past the memorial to the fallen every day, I have a big issue with someone using that tragedy and that profound loss as a weapon in a fight between warring factions in a sport. It offends me on so many levels and so many ways. But to then flat out turn your back on those who lived through that tragedy and that loss after rallying them to your cause 1 year later for a cash handout that ends all the fighting, followed by doing a complete 180 where you're now talking about friendly lunches in London and the PIF's incredible vision for golf? The 9/11 Families United Coalition said it best in the aftermath. Here's the quote. PGA Commissioner Jay Monahan co-opted the 9/11 community last year in the PGA's unequivocal agreement that the Saudi LIV project was nothing more than sports washing of Saudi Arabia's reputation. But now the PGA and Monahan appear to have become just one more paid Saudi shills, taking billions of dollars to cleanse the Saudi reputation so that Americans in the world will forget how the kingdom spent their billions of dollars before 9/11 to fund terrorism, spread their vitriolic hatred of Americans, and finance al-Qaeda and the murder of our loved ones. Make no mistake, we will never forget, end quote. I don't give a rat's ass if he regrets not giving these folks a heads up about his about face. A heads up or even an apology wouldn't have done a damn thing to repair the damage he caused these people. Jay Monahan is one of the biggest hypocrites and sellouts ever. He got a promotion to CEO of all of golf everywhere by going back on everything he said over the last 2 years. And if the rank and file golfers of the PGA can, I hope they do everything in their power to get rid of him. To borrow Oliver Queen's famous tagline, Jay Monahan, you have failed this sport.
You have failed this sport and you have failed this society, by the way. Just a heads up. And remember, if you're watching and you're like, okay, whatever. So this is basically just on Jay Monahan's narrative going into the whole thing. And yes, you can do what you want about the money washing. That's perfectly fine. You can have your own opinion on it. But the using of what had happened, I'll jump on it afterwards, but is as disgusting as I have seen in a long time. We'll talk more about Mr. Monahan in a second, but Anthony, go right ahead.
Yeah, James nailed it. He hit it out the ballpark with that rant. 100%. Monahan's a hypocrite, and I even go one further because I try to stay away from politics as much as possible, but I did find it very noticeable that the very conservatives who are very outspoken about the NBA's relationship with China and bringing up their human rights issues was very quiet in this case with Saudi Arabia and their human rights issues. So I thought it was I thought it was a little bit of an eye opener that popped up. But yes, Monahan using what happened on September 11th and the families that went through. Hey, look, my brother lost several coworkers that day, and I lost a couple of friends who worked at the local firehouse in Brownsville that day too. So for us, there were people that we knew that went to work that day and never came home. So we can only imagine what their families had to go through, and we knew them as friends and associates,
and are still going through,
and are still going through to this day. So I just thought what Monahan was doing was very tasteless, and painting this picture publicly, but then privately, you're pretty much making business dealings with the very people. And look, Rabbi and I, with wrestling fans, we have gone back and forth and openly talked about World Wrestling Entertainment, and their relationship and doing shows in Saudi Arabia, and obviously, not being fans of that as well. But in the case of Monahan, it looks just unbelievably bad on his part. To even go down that route and to be so vocal and to be outspoken, and golfers find us out about it on Twitter, no less. You don't even reach out to the top goalie, the top golfers in the world, to even gauge them or to even talk to them or to even reach out to them privately about this deal before it being announced publicly. Like I said, Jay, everything I could possibly say, you said it 100%, and I agree with you.
Thank you.
He's a complete hypocrite, for what it's worth. And like I said, I don't know. I don't know if it was a fear of losing more golfers to LIV. I don't know if it was the many lawsuits and the litigation that now with this merger, everything goes away. But like I said, it was a shock to obviously all of us when we found out. But it definitely it's just like I said, everything you said, Jay. I don't think I can agree anymore with that point.
I want to wrap this up. I want to look this not in a politics perspective, but I want to look at this of why the split originally happened and where we are now. The reason the split where we are now. The split originally happened because of the fact that the PGA's pay system was not great. The PGA was not giving their players the correct name and license, and the PGA players were not getting paid what they should be, especially for how much the PGA is marketed and to how much the PGA is worth today. They weren't getting paid like on a UFC, WWE level, but they weren't getting paid to what they should. And that kind of, believe it or not, LIV actually helped that out because it made the PGA have elevated events. It gave incentives for the PGA to play more in those events. LIV players, by the way, got paid way too freaking much because it's ridiculous. But they are also bringing in the team concept. That's something that the PGA like that. That's something that they're going to do in the near future. I think business-wise, this does make sense. You don't want to be in legal hell for the rest of your life, is what the PGA doesn't want to do. And unfortunately, they couldn't wait out the Saudi money. That's essentially what this is. That's perfectly, you make with it what you will. What I do want to talk about is what Jay Monahan did as a business person and as a commissioner. What you've done as a commissioner, and by the way, you are not a great person either for what you have done and basically what you have said, because you should know it comes back to haunt you. But what you have done as a commissioner is taken a situation that could have been negotiated, that could have been talked about more publicly, that could have been talked about more publicly with everybody involved, that could have been talked about more in the media, because God forbid your sport doesn't really get a lot of attention during the regular season regardless. Talking of a merger would have actually at least helped for a few minutes so you can kind of understand what's going on. No, the about face that you turned is kind of despicable and kind of whatever way it happened. Did it happen in a secret lair? Did it happen over text exchanges? I don't give a shit. What you basically have done to yourself is made yourself look foolish and made yourself look like you don't have the pulse of your people. The one thing you need to do as a commissioner is have the pulse of your players, whether it be the Rory McIlroys of the world or that golf pro a few weeks ago that did very well in the PGA Championship. I forgot his name, didn't qualify for the US Open. All of those players are part of your tour.
Everyone in between.
Everyone in between is part of your tour. And they should know about this before I know about this, before Anthony knows about this, before Jay knows about this, before anybody else knows about this, for God's sakes. That's where you went wrong. That's where you went wrong, and that's why you're not going to have a job at the end of this. There's going to be a mutiny on the bounty, and you're going to be Captain Fletcher being thrown off of the boat. I'm not sure if that's how it worked, but we're going to use that as an example anyway. And I think it's well deserved. Not just the fact that all of the hypocritical stuff that was said. This is just a bad business job. This is just a bad look. This is just a bad situation for everybody. And when you make the LIV Tour the heroes in this whole situation, and make them look reasonable, make them look like they weren't being pricks. By the way, Brooks Koepka, who did win the PGA Championship and is one of the favorites to win the US Open, is probably still partying in between that because he's a lazy man. But still, what you have done is basically made your sport look like fools. And when you're representing a sport, you're not representing yourself, you're representing everybody else. This is the same way with Roger Goodell if he does something stupid. The whole NFL suffers. If Gary Bettman does another thing stupid, the whole NHL suffers. If Adam Silver does something stupid, the NBA suffers, and so on and so on. Not even going to get to Rob Manfred.
No, because he's already done stupid things, and baseball has.
Yes, and everybody has suffered. Jay is an I player, and what he needs to realize is that there's no I in Jay Monahan. There is actually an I in Jay Monahan, but still. Actually, no, there is no I. There is no I in Jay Monahan.
No, because it's Monahan, not Moynihan. Like
I know it's Monahan. I fixed it. Calm down. But overall, this is just not a good look. This is just not the way that you run business. And Jay Monahan is not going to be the executive, or as Sepp Blatter used to say, the president of everything when this is all said and done at the end of this, and rightfully so.
No.
Okay. With that being said, I think we're done. For Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, Birdie the Heat mascot, and John Sterling, who apparently can take a ball to the face and still call a final out.
Yes!
You, Mr. 85-year-old man. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz. Poor Bernie, poor John. You know the socials, facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines Live, youtube.com/OnTheSportsLines the next day, and on demand after. And
our Twitter handle is @ONTH Sportslines, where you will find a link to this show at some point tomorrow, along with other sports tidbits, nuggets, and stories that we think are worth your time to check out.
Jay is going to go and get on his Victor Wembanyama research, because we'll have an NBA draft preview or an NBA draft live show next week on Thursday night. Join us then. The Victor Victory Party will be all set. Good night, everybody from On the Sports Lines.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.